Mental toughness is not a gift reserved for a chosen few, but a skill forged in the fire of adversity and sharpened through deliberate effort. In a world that constantly tests our limits, the strongest minds do not crumble. They adapt, endure, and overcome. Building mental toughness means embracing discomfort, silencing the noise of doubt, and rising each time life knocks you down. It is the difference between giving up and pushing forward, between mediocrity and greatness. If you want to take control of your life and unlock your highest potential, you must first train your mind to be stronger than your excuses. My dear friends, we live in a world where we are constantly told to avoid pain, to dodge discomfort, and to stay where it feels safe. But let me tell you something honest and raw. Comfort zones are beautiful places, yet nothing ever grows there. Growth begins the moment we step outside of what is easy and familiar. Challenges are not punishments, they are invitations. Invitations to rise, to stretch, to become someone we were always meant to be. If you are waiting for life to stop testing you before you begin, you are waiting for a moment that will never come. Life will test you, and you get to choose how you respond. You can retreat into fear, or you can lean into the fire of growth. My dear friends, challenges come in all shapes. A rejection that bruises your confidence, a failure that shakes your sense of worth, a heartbreak that leaves your soul aching. But what if we change the story we tell ourselves about these moments? What if instead of seeing them as setbacks, we saw them as the terrain where our resilience is born? What if we believed that the pain we feel today is carving the strength we will stand on tomorrow? The truth is, the most courageous people you know have walked through storms that tried to break them. They did not wait for the storm to pass. They became the storm. And you can too. When we embrace challenges, we begin to understand that struggle is not a sign we are weak. It is a sign we are alive and reaching beyond who we used to be. The moments that bring us to our knees are often the moments that wake us up to who we really are. But that awakening does not come easily. It demands that we stay present in the pain. It asks us to feel it, not flee from it. It requires us to trust that something is being built within us, even when nothing around us makes sense. That is not easy. That is brave. And bravery, my friends, is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more. Maybe you have been taught that struggle is something to be ashamed of. Maybe you have been told to smile when you are breaking inside. But let me remind you, you were not born to pretend. You were born to feel deeply, to live fully, and to carry your scars with pride. The world does not need more perfect people. It needs more real people. People who are willing to be vulnerable in the face of difficulty. People who can say, I am hurting, but I am still standing. That kind of honesty creates strength. That kind of honesty builds trust, and trust, my friends, is the soil in which mental toughness grows. So many of us look at others and assume they have it all figured out. But you never know what someone is carrying behind their smile. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you cannot see. That is why comparison will never lead to growth. The only race worth running is the one with yourself. And that race will not be easy. You will trip. You will fall. You will question whether it is even worth it. But each time you rise, you are building something no one can take from you. You are building resilience. And resilience is not loud, it is quiet. It is the quiet decision to try again when every part of you wants to give up. You may be thinking, what if I fail again? What if I try and it still does not work out? And to that I say, what if you rise stronger? What if the process of failing is actually the process of becoming? When we avoid challenges, we rob ourselves of the chance to find out what we are made of. But when we face them, we discover that we are capable of so much more than we ever imagined. It is in the fire that gold is refined. It is in the pressure that diamonds are formed. And it is in the challenge that your character is shaped. Mental toughness is not a switch you flip. It is a muscle you build. And just like muscles, it grows through tension. It grows through resistance. You cannot build strength without lifting something heavy. The same goes for your mind and spirit. When you face difficulty and choose to keep going, even when it hurts, you are doing the invisible work of growth. And that work matters. It matters more than the outcome. It matters more than whether you win or lose. Because the person you become in the process is the real victory. You will not always get it right. You will not always feel strong, and that is okay. Mental toughness does not mean you never feel afraid or broken. It means you keep choosing to show up anyway. It means you keep your heart open even when it has been hurt. It means you learn to breathe through the panic and find your footing in the unknown. That is not weakness. That is power, real power. And once you know you can walk through fire and survive, you stop living in fear of being burned. You start living from a place of quiet confidence that no matter what comes, you will not be undone. My dear friends, the challenge you are facing today may not be one you chose, but you can still choose how you face it. You can let it define you, or you can let it refine you. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you. The pain will not last forever. But what you build within yourself during that pain can last a lifetime. That is why we must stop waiting for life to be easier and start learning to be stronger. Stronger in heart, stronger in mind, stronger in soul. Every challenge is a chance to become that version of yourself. And once you begin to see that, once you begin to embrace challenges as opportunities, something powerful starts to shift within you. You stop resenting the struggle and start rising through it. You stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? That shift is everything. That shift is where strength is born. And it is from that place of strength, my friends, that we begin to shape our lives with purpose. Because once we learn to rise through challenge, the next step becomes learning how to stay disciplined in the climb. My dear friends, after we choose to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth, the next step is to stay grounded in something much deeper. Something that does not depend on how we feel in the moment or what the world tells us is urgent. That something is discipline. Discipline is not a punishment. It is a form of self-love. It is the quiet agreement we make with ourselves to keep showing up even when the excitement fades. It is the decision to build something meaningful, brick by brick, day after day, especially on the days when no one is watching. If motivation is the spark that gets us started, discipline is the fire that keeps us going long after the spark dies. We cannot build anything lasting without it. My dear friends, I know the word discipline might sound rigid or cold, but it is anything but that. True discipline is deeply personal. It is born not out of guilt, but out of purpose. It does not shout or shame. It whispers and waits. It shows up in the small choices we make when no one is keeping score. Like choosing to wake up early when sleep would be easier. Like turning off distractions to focus on the work that matters. Like saying no to what is easy so you can say yes to what is right. These are not grand gestures, these are quiet acts of courage. Acts that build a life of integrity and strength. The beautiful thing about discipline is that it does not demand perfection. It simply asks for consistency. We do not need to be the strongest, the smartest, or the fastest. We need to be willing to keep trying, to fall and stand again, to learn and begin again, to show up again and again and again. Because it is in the repetition that we become unshakable. Every time you choose to keep a promise to yourself, you are proving that you can be trusted. You are building a foundation of self-respect. And nothing in the world is more powerful than knowing you can trust yourself to follow through. But let us be honest, discipline is not always exciting. It can feel lonely. It can feel exhausting. You will not always feel inspired. You will not always see results right away. And in those moments, it is easy to question why you even started. But this is exactly where discipline matters most. When the results are invisible and the work feels heavy, that is when you are being shaped. That is when your mental toughness deepens. That is when you are becoming the kind of person who does not give up when things get hard. You are becoming someone who finishes what they begin. Now, dear friends, discipline is also how we reclaim our power in a noisy world, a world that wants us distracted, reactive, pulled in 1,000 directions. But when we root ourselves in daily habits that align with our values, we stop being controlled by the chaos around us. We become anchored. We stop living by accident and start living by design. And that does not just change what we do, it changes who we are. When your habits reflect your values, you begin to live with purpose, not pressure. You move from fear to freedom, from reaction to intention. That is where true strength lives. We often look for shortcuts and quick fixes because we are afraid that consistency will cost us too much. But what if the real cost is in never committing fully to anything? What if the price of avoiding discipline is a life half-lived? Because let me tell you, shortcuts might offer comfort, but they rarely offer growth. The real magic happens when we choose the long road, the slow road, the road that demands patience and persistence. That road builds more than results. It builds resilience. It teaches us that we are capable of doing hard things and that we can do them over and over again. When you start honoring your commitments to yourself, something profound shifts. You stop seeking validation from others because your confidence comes from the work you do in private. You begin to stand taller because you are not waiting for life to hand you strength. You are building it with your own hands. And it does not happen all at once. It happens through every early morning you rise, every distraction you resist, every goal you protect. That slow, steady work is not glamorous, but it is sacred. It is the work that defines who you become. And yes, you will have days when you want to quit. Days when you wonder if it even matters. Days when no one claps for your efforts and you feel like giving up. Those days are part of the journey too. On those days, lean into the truth that discipline is not about being perfect. It is about being faithful. Faithful to your values, faithful to your purpose, faithful to the vision of the life you are trying to build. That faith will carry you through the silence. It will carry you through the setbacks. And it will remind you that this work you are doing is not just about results. It is about becoming. My dear friends, discipline is not about control. It is about freedom. Freedom to become the person you were meant to be. Freedom to walk into rooms with quiet confidence because you have done the work. Freedom to face life with strength because you have practiced showing up in the dark. That kind of freedom does not come from waiting for the right time. And as you keep showing up, as you keep doing the hard and holy work of building yourself, you begin to notice something. The noise of self-doubt gets quieter. The pull of distraction weakens, and your purpose gets louder. Because once you build discipline in your daily life, the next challenge is not just to keep going, but to choose how you think and what you believe in the face of adversity. My dear friends, your thoughts are not just whispers in your mind. They are architects. They are builders. They are the quiet forces shaping how you see the world and, more importantly, how you see yourself. You can train your body every single day, but if your mind remains your enemy, you will never feel strong. If your inner voice is full of doubt, fear, and shame, it will sabotage even your greatest effort. You will find yourself shrinking when you should be standing tall, holding back when your heart is ready to leap. Mental toughness is not only about what we do, It is about what we believe when no one else is listening. And the voice that matters most is the one inside your head. My dear friends, we all have an inner voice. Some days it sounds like a coach, other days it sounds like a critic. It is the difference between saying, I can try, and saying, I will fail before I begin. It is subtle, it is sneaky, but it is powerful. And the truth is, we often speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to someone we love. We call ourselves names, we downplay our wins, we highlight our flaws like neon signs, and dismiss our strengths like shadows. That inner dialogue becomes a pattern. And over time, that pattern becomes our reality. We cannot talk ourselves into believing we are strong if we constantly tell ourselves we are weak. We cannot lead our lives with courage if our thoughts are soaked in fear. Mental toughness requires us to take responsibility for our thinking, not to shame ourselves, but to reclaim our power. Every time you catch a thought that says, I am not enough, you have a choice. You can accept it, or you can challenge it. And let me tell you this with all the love in the world. Just because a thought is familiar does not mean it is true. You are allowed to rewrite the script. It takes bravery to confront your own thoughts, to stand in the mirror and say, I am worthy, even if I do not feel it today. To look at the old stories you have been carrying and ask whether they are helping or hurting. Some of those stories began years ago. Maybe someone told you that you were too sensitive or too loud or not smart enough. Maybe no one had to say it out loud because the silence said it all. But you get to decide what stays. You get to decide which thoughts get a seat at your table. That is not easy work. That is soul work. That is the work of building a resilient mind. And you will not get it right every day. Some days your mind will run wild with fear and comparison. Some days the old lies will sound convincing. That is okay. The goal is not to silence every negative thought. The goal is to stop giving them the final word. You are allowed to say, I hear you, but I am choosing a better story. You are allowed to feel afraid and still move forward. You are allowed to believe in your strength even when your inner critic tells you otherwise. That is the power of mental toughness. It is not about never doubting. It is about choosing truth over fear again and again. My dear friends, our inner dialogue shapes how we show up in the world. If we tell ourselves we are resilient, we begin to act like it. If we tell ourselves we are unworthy, we start shrinking in rooms we belong in. The way we speak to ourselves becomes the way we live. That is why this work matters so deeply. You are not just changing your thoughts, you are changing your future. You are choosing to be someone who leads with love, not judgment, with courage, not perfection, with self-compassion, not self-criticism. And when you do that, you do not just change your life, you inspire others to do the same. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the freedom to believe a new thought. A thought that says, I am allowed to grow. I am allowed to take up space. I am allowed to start again. When your mind is filled with grace instead of shame, discipline becomes less about punishment and more about purpose. You stop hustling to prove your worth and start building because you know you are already worthy. That shift creates clarity. That clarity becomes your compass. And with it, you can navigate even the hardest storms without losing your center. You may still hear the voice of fear. That is normal. But now you know how to answer it. Not with panic, not with anger, but with presence. You can say, I see you, fear, and I will keep going anyway. I hear you, doubt, but I trust my growth. That is the language of strength. That is the mindset of someone who knows they were built for more. You were never meant to silence your humanity. You were meant to lead it. To sit in the middle of your imperfections and still choose progress. to face the inner noise and still choose to rise. My dear friends, once we learn to speak truth to ourselves, something else begins to shift. We stop outsourcing our worth. We stop chasing external applause to fill internal silence. We begin to anchor ourselves in something real, something steady. And when our inner world is steady, our outer actions become intentional. We start living not out of reaction, but out of clarity. That is when we become unshakable. That is when we become a force. And once you build that foundation in your mind, you are ready for the next step. Because after you learn to lead your inner dialogue, the next step is to stay focused on your purpose despite the storms around you. My dear friends, when we rise through challenge, when we build daily discipline, and when we begin to quiet the war within our own minds, we arrive at a place where everything begins to feel possible. But even in that place, we face one of the hardest tests of all, the test of staying focused, the test of remaining anchored in purpose when the world around us is full of noise. Distractions are not always loud. Sometimes they are quiet comforts. They disguise themselves as opportunities or urgency or even helpfulness. But they slowly pull us away from what really matters. And if we are not careful, we lose sight of the reason we began this journey in the first place. My dear friends, life will always try to pull your attention in 1,000 directions. People will demand your time, tasks will compete for your energy, and doubts will whisper that maybe you're not doing enough or not doing it right. But purpose is not found in chaos. Purpose is found in clarity. It is not about being busy, it is about being rooted. You do not need to do more. You need to remember why you started. You need to return to the truth of what lights you up and hold that fire through every storm. Because storms will come, they always do. But purpose is what keeps your feet on the ground and your heart on the path. Purpose is not something we find once and then keep forever without effort. It needs to be protected. It needs to be nourished. Like any living thing, it needs space to breathe and time to grow. Some days you will feel full of drive and direction. Other days you will question everything. That is part of the process. What matters is that you do not walk away when it gets hard. That you do not let temporary doubt erase permanent truth. You are not here to drift. You are here to build something meaningful with your life. That does not happen by accident. That happens with intention. And intention requires boundaries. It requires you to say no to what is good so you can say yes to what is great. It requires you to turn down the volume of the world so you can hear the voice within you. That voice may be quiet at first, but it speaks the language of purpose. It reminds you of your why, of the people you want to serve, of the legacy you want to leave. It reminds you that you are not doing this for applause. You are doing it because something in you knows this is what you are meant to do. That kind of clarity can guide you through any storm. But do not be surprised when the world does not always understand your focus. Not everyone will see your vision. Not everyone will applaud your commitment. Some may even question your choices, but their confusion is not your cue to stop. You are not here to meet their expectations. You are here to meet your calling. And your calling will not always make sense to others. That is okay. It is not meant to. Purpose is personal. And when you stay connected to it, you no longer need approval to keep going. You just need that quiet knowing in your gut that this matters, that this is yours to carry. My dear friends, distractions will not always feel like threats. Sometimes they come dressed as comfort. They tell you to take it easy, to lower your standards, to delay the work that feels too hard. And in moments of exhaustion, that temptation is real. But what you delay today becomes the weight you carry tomorrow. Purpose asks for presence. It asks for your full attention. You cannot pour into it with half a heart. You must be all in, even when it hurts, even when it feels like no one else understands why you are still holding on. You hold on because it is yours. And some days, the distractions will come from within. Your own mind will try to pull you away. Old fears, new doubts, the voice that says you are not making a difference or that someone else is already doing it better. You must learn to recognize that voice and respond with love and truth. Remind yourself why you began. Remind yourself who you are becoming. Purpose is not a destination. It is a daily decision, a decision to return again and again to the work that matters, to the dream that keeps calling, even when everything else tries to drown it out. Purpose does not promise ease, it promises meaning. And meaning will always ask you to stretch, to grow, to become. You will be asked to keep showing up when results are slow and progress feels invisible. But do not mistake silence for failure. Some of the deepest work happens in quiet seasons. Seeds grow underground long before they break the surface. You are not behind, you are becoming. And the discipline of staying focused, even when it feels like nothing is moving, is one of the most powerful acts of faith you can make. That is what builds a life of depth. My dear friends, when you protect your purpose, everything else begins to align. Your decisions become clearer, your energy becomes sharper, your time begins to serve you instead of scatter you. This is the fruit of mental toughness. It is not about being rigid, it is about being rooted. And when you are rooted in your why, you do not break when the wind blows. You bend, you adjust, but you remain. And from that place of focus and faith, you are ready to move into the final step. Because once you have learned to stay focused through storms, the next truth becomes clear. You were never meant to do this alone. My dear friends, you have walked with me through the fire of challenge, through the quiet grind of discipline, through the intimate work of mastering your thoughts, and through the storm of staying focused on what matters. And now we arrive at the heart of it all. You were never meant to do this alone. Mental toughness is not built in isolation. It is born in the moments when we dare to reach out, when we let others see us not as perfect, but as present, as willing, as human. We live in a world that celebrates independence, but the truth is, real strength is forged in connection, in vulnerability, in the courage to say, I need help, I need support, and I am still strong. When you surround yourself with people who believe in your vision, who remind you of your worth on the days you forget it yourself, something powerful happens. You begin to believe in your future again. You begin to stand taller, not because you have all the answers, but because you know you are not standing alone. Mental toughness does not mean closing yourself off. It means opening up in the right places with the right people and allowing truth to anchor you deeper than fear ever could. We rise stronger when we rise together. So build your tribe. Find the ones who challenge you to grow and love you in the process. Let yourself be seen. Let yourself be lifted. Let yourself be human. Because the road to becoming is long and full of sharp edges. But with resilience in your heart, discipline in your habits, clarity in your thoughts, focus in your purpose, and the right people by your side, there is nothing you cannot overcome. You are already stronger than you know. And now is the time to step forward and live like it. Keep going. The world needs what only you can bring.